Good morning, everybody, and happy Aloha Friday. Welcome to PSG of Mercer County. PSG of Mercer County is a group that is here for you, anybody that is in any kind of career transition. And it doesn't matter why you're in a career transition. It could be that your former employer had a reorganization, maybe they were impacted by COVID, or you're decided to take you decided to take your career in your hands and shift accordingly, and you just needed time to do so. Or maybe you're taking care of a family member, and now you're ready and have the time to get back into the workforce. So we are here to provide information, resources, a little bit of guidance, and hopefully a little bit of fun on a Friday morning and provide resources to you. Today is also National Wiggle Your Toes Day. So I thought that was a good thing to celebrate when we're on virtual calls, because we don't know what we're wearing below our shoulders. We only see our bust shots here, head shots here. So if you want to celebrate National Wiggle Your Toes Day, certainly feel free to do so. You could either just put it in chat that you're wiggling your toes or not, and celebrate accordingly. Among the resources that we do have for everyone who is in job search, and certainly for all of you here, we do have our LinkedIn group. So we did have, before the meeting started, a little bit of a LinkedIn discussion. Our LinkedIn group is called PSG of Mercer County. So if you are interested in becoming a member of our LinkedIn group, and I encourage you to do so, please search for us in the group section of LinkedIn. Our group has over 1,680 members, 1,680 members. These are all people that have been through job search at least once, and also have been to our meetings at least once. So what becomes nice about it is these are people that if you reach out to them in our group, there's a good chance that what they're going to do is contact you back. And so that becomes very helpful and important. There are a lot of times where we reach out to people on LinkedIn and you don't hear back from them, but job seekers will help job seekers. And for you to be involved, maybe you're not quite ready to write your own post, but what you could do is you can share an article that you recently read, or maybe you got an email about a terrific job lead that's just not for you. You can copy and paste that into the group section for other people, and your activity in LinkedIn is actually good for your profile in LinkedIn. So do be active on LinkedIn. Also, we have our website. Our website is psgofmercercounty.org, psgofmercercounty.org. Yeah, feel free to go check out our website. It is over 120 pages of web content, so there is a lot of content there. And so we have a great section for getting started in your job search, if that's something that becomes relevant or important to you. That's in the tab called Career Options. And we also have a Professional Development tab. Yeah, so our website has, in the Professional Development tab, there's a section called e-learning. We have links to 71 e-learning websites. So if you're looking to learn a new skill or something of interest, you may be able to find it there. You could do it online. Many of those sites are completely free. Some of them do require a payment, either for the class or subscription. You can look into them, but at least it's one-stop shopping to find 71 e-learning websites. And of course, if you're asked in an interview, what have you been doing since you lost your last job? Well, you certainly can tell the truth and say you were job hunting, but a more powerful answer is, hey, I just learned this new skill. And that could be even more powerful and be a good indication of you being a go-getter. So could be important. Okay, so again, the way we are going to do questions and answers is we are going to use chat. And so in the chat, if you're not familiar with chat, in the upper right corner of the screen, there's a little cartoon call out icon. It looks like a circle with a tab at the bottom. So if a cartoon character maybe as Ken and I were talking earlier, someone on Doonesbury. We're going to be talking. There'd be a cartoon call out with words in it. So you click on that and that opens up chat on your screen. And in there, you can enter your message. And I suggest that you send it to everyone. That way Ken and I can see it. If you just send it to Ken or just to me, one of us may accidentally miss it. We don't want that to happen, so send it to us all. Also, your question will get recorded in chat, and that becomes helpful because I will download and save the chat and post it later today. So you can go back and refer to it for any of the contact information that people post. So when you use chat, write the word question. And that's the digital equivalent of you raising your hand. And then what will happen is when we are ready to ask questions, I will be looking for the questions. If you have a question, then I will just invite you to unmute and speak to Ken, or type the word question followed by the text of your question, and I will read it on your behalf. And that is the way we'll do it. Ken has 5 logical breakpoints plus the time at the end for Q&A, and that's the way we're going to manage it in today's presentation. And for that, PSG of Mercer County is very pleased to welcome back Ken Sher. Ken is a career coach and executive coach with 30 years experience leading and coaching individuals and managerial teams at companies such as J&J and Bristol-Myers Squibb. In addition to winning multiple achievement awards in various sales and marketing roles, he led 4 different sales and training and leadership development teams, including a global organization. Ken's teams designed, developed, and delivered leadership training to multiple levels within J&J. Ken is president of Sher Coaching, and he is dedicated to improving individual and team performance by focusing on his Trust Success Model, T-R-U-S-T, Trust Success Model, which when applied to leadership and career management can be transformational. So PSG of Mercer County is always pleased to welcome someone we trust, Ken Sher.
Thank you, David. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, we do, or I do.
Okay, great. All right, well, good morning, everybody. And I'm glad to be back talking to you folks, and hopeful, and I expect that you will get some good stuff out of this talk, and I look forward to answering any questions or responding to any comments that you might have. You know, when you talk about being out of work, really, you could call it anything you want, being laid off, being terminated, being furloughed. The reality is it's not a great feeling, and it doesn't matter what you call it. It's challenging, it's frustrating, it's demoralizing, or it can be all those things. And it can be especially so when you're a mid to late career worker, because you do have a little more working against you. But the one thing that I do want you to keep in mind always is hope, because people are being hired in their 40s, in their 50s, in their 60s. And you just look at what's going on in the employment market. It was mentioned today, over 900,000 jobs were filled in the last employment report. People are looking for good people. The other thing is a lot of people are leaving their jobs. The pandemic caused a resetting, I think, for a lot of people of priorities, of values, and they're looking for other opportunities, which opens up new opportunities for other people as well. So one of the things that, I guess the first thing that you have to do is try to come to grips with the fact that you're out and looking for a new job. And I know for me personally, when I lost my job after 25 years with Johnson & Johnson, at 52 years old, with 2 kids in college and 1 in high school, it really was like going through the stages of grief, the 5 stages of grief. At first, I couldn't believe it. I mean, how could I be out of work? J&J always took care of me. I took care of them. And then I was angry that I wasn't able to find another opportunity within J&J. I tried to negotiate finding something. And then frankly, I went through a period of depression. I don't think it was actually clinical depression, but I think I was pretty darn close. And I want to share it with you because many of you may be going through some of it as well. And it was such a difficult time for me. I felt like I was looking into this black hole that if I fell into it, I may never come out. And I sought help. I went to a therapist. Frankly, I went on antidepressants. And fortunately, I had the support system and was able to dig deep to find something to get me going and get me back on track. And I accepted the fact that I was out of work. And I feel very fortunate that I was able to find 3 new jobs while I was still in my 50s. So I think I'm proof that you can do it. And hopefully some of the things I'm going to share with you today on how I did it will be things that you might be able to employ as well. Because today we're going to talk about things about letting you know that you're not alone. Now, you just look around this call and you know you're not alone, but to really know that there are people there and things that you can get support from to help you get to that next step of your career. We're going to talk about some real ideas on how you can move forward that might strengthen what you're doing now, or maybe they're a different perspective that you haven't thought of in the past. And then I'm also going to give you a way to answer any interview question and talk about even some of those tricky questions that you could be posed with concerning your age, even though they don't put it outright that it is your age. Now, very quickly, my story is, as I mentioned, I worked for Johnson & Johnson for 25 years. Everything was going great, and then all of a sudden it wasn't going so good. I had got a new general manager, and he let me know in our first meeting that I was not the guy for his job. He literally said to me in our first meeting that he had led a couple of different training and development departments, and I would never live up to his expectations. And that's the denial part. I couldn't believe that. So I went about trying to prove him wrong, which I didn't. And that's where I ended up in the HR office one day, driving home, dazed and confused about how could I lose my job? What am I going to do next? What am I going to tell my family and friends? It was a very challenging time, as I know some of you have experienced as well. But the first thing I knew I needed to do once I got out of that funk I was in is get my head on straight. And you need to do that. As I mentioned, it doesn't matter whether you were laid off, furloughed, or whatever. You need to believe in yourself. You need to remind yourself of the value you have, and you need to get your head on straight. It doesn't matter. I tell you, I was giving a talk. It was a few months after I was let go by J&J, and it was the first time, and I said it in front of a group of about 70 people, that I realized I wasn't laid off. I was actually fired. And as I spoke those words to that group, I got a little emotional about it because I couldn't believe it. I was fired, but it didn't change anything. I was out of work, and the sky didn't fall. There was no thunder or lightning. It's just what it is. And so once I realized that it's not a big deal, a lot of people have been laid off, it helped me get my head on straight and look forward. And just to prove that point, if you recall, there was the tech bubble that burst. And before that happened, if somebody came in to interview for a job in the positions I was in, and they were laid off, we would think, if they were so good, their company would have found a place for them. They wouldn't have been laid off. But once that tech bubble burst, and there were these brilliant, hardworking, dedicated people that were in the job market, that kind of changed. Being laid off was less of a stigma than it was before. And then we had the Great Recession in 2000, and even more talented, hardworking, accomplished people were available. And today, after the pandemic, I don't know anybody who doesn't either know somebody who's been laid off or has been laid off themselves. So being out of work is not the stigma it used to be, and you shouldn't be ashamed of it. You shouldn't be afraid of talking about it. You just want to be positive and look forward to your next opportunity. Now, if one of your friends came up to you after they were let go or out of work and told you about how badly they feel, told you about how maybe helpless or hopeless the situation seems, oh, I'm older, I'm never going to get a job, maybe I wasn't as good as I thought I was, the reality is you would pick them up. You would say, no, that's not true. You know you have a lot to offer. You know that the company that gets you is going to be lucky to get you because of your experience, your skills, and your accomplishments. And you would give a lot of compassion to those people. But what's important is that you need to give that same compassion to yourself. A lot of times we're our own worst critic. We have that negative voice in our head that goes on and tells us these terrible things that we would never say to somebody else, and yet we say it to ourselves. So give yourselves a break. Be compassionate to yourself. Be positive. Be optimistic about what the future has. Henry Ford once said, whether you believe you can or you can't, you are correct. So you need to believe you can. It has to start here. You have to believe in yourself before anybody else will believe in you. And I know that might sound like some of this, you know, some of that highfalutin motivational talk, but it is the truth. Because if you don't believe in yourself, it comes out, even if you think you're giving the greatest interview answer or responding to any question or in a networking conversation that way. If you don't believe, people feel that and hear that in what you say. Now, one of the things that a lot of you are faced with is age discrimination. And the reality is, it is out there. People do look at people sometimes and say, oh, they're older. They're not going to consider them. Put those aside. Those are people you're not going to convince, and that's okay, because there are plenty of people that will hire you. Now, the Age Discrimination Act in 1967 prohibits any age discrimination or hiring practices or how you treat people based on their age. But the fact of the matter is that it actually is not illegal to ask you how old you are. It sounds weird, right? You actually can. I think there's only one state where it is illegal. But the point of it is that if they don't hire you and they ask you about age, you might be able to say, well, they asked me about age, and that's when the interview went south, so they're discriminating against me by age. So companies won't ask you that, but technically they are allowed to. But the reality of it is, too, that you can't hide your age. You could pretend you're not 40 or 50 or 60 or more, but they're going to see your picture on LinkedIn, or they're going to see you when you walk in the door for that interview. Now, don't get me wrong. I would love to be able to put this picture up here from my college days and show this youthful guy again, but that's not me. And as I mentioned, they're going to find out one way or the other. So don't do it hesitantly. Be yourself. Be proud of yourself. You are who you are, and you've got a lot to offer, and that's where your focus should be. Because the fact is that people aren't not hiring you because you're 50 or 60. It's not the age, it's what's behind the age. It's your not being able to demonstrate that you're up to date with what's going on today, whether it's technology or issues in the marketplace. It's your, maybe in some of your interview questions, you might not be demonstrating how well you adapt to change or your willingness to adapt to change. Technology is a big area that very clearly will say to someone, boy, if they can't handle email or video calls or whatever, that maybe they're not up to speed. I'll tell you a little, one of the areas that I think people miss that can send a message that you're too old or you're older is in your LinkedIn link. If you look at your contact information, if your LinkedIn link has all those numbers and letters at the end of it that LinkedIn gives you when you sign up for LinkedIn, that could be sending the message that you don't know how to do that you're not up to speed with technology, that social media is out of your realm of comfort. And if that's the case, it's not that you're 50, it's that you're not technologically savvy enough to get that job. Now, you don't need to be a programmer in technology, and I'll give you some examples as this talk goes on, but think about the message you're saying through your marketing materials, through your interview answers. Are they saying that you are too old, or are they saying that not only are you current, but you're actually at the cutting edge of whatever's happening in that market? One of the things I mentioned is how you have to have it in your head first, that you believe in yourself. And part of that will come from the way you present yourself. Now, we all know that you have heard about reading body language, right? If somebody's arms are closed and their kind of body is closed off, then they're not open to what you're saying. But there's a TED Talk by Amy Cuddy. If you have not seen it, I highly recommend it. It's about 15 minutes long. And she talks about how your body language actually affects you in terms of how you present yourself and how you feel about yourself. I think it's fascinating. It's a great TED Talk, again, one of the most popular that's there. And what she says is that if you have what she calls a power pose, which is kind of an open stance, think about somebody who scores a goal in hockey or crosses a finish line in a race, their hands are up. And she did a number of studies showing that those cases that a person's testosterone levels go up and their cortisol or fight or flight hormones go down. And she suggests doing that 2 minutes a day to help increase those hormones and decrease the negative ones and help you to present yourself in a more positive way. Now, I did this actually when I interviewed for one of those jobs I got after J&J at Bristol Myers Squibb. To the office early. The receptionist said I needed to wait a few minutes. I excused myself to the restroom. I went in the restroom. I looked under each stall just to make sure nobody was in there. And then I stood in front of the mirror in a power pose, as Amy Cuddy said, to try to get those testosterone levels up. And now, I did get a job. I'm not sure if it was directly related to that, but as my grandmother used to say, it didn't hurt. So you might want to check that out. Regardless, I go back to this Amy Cuddy video on a somewhat regular basis because it is so motivational and inspirational for me. Now, the other thing is, when I got laid off, and many of you may be feeling it, I was thinking, boy, maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was. Maybe I'm not as valuable. Maybe I don't have as much to offer. And it was hard because I identified, J&J was my identification. That's who I was. And this quote, actually, I would say I've lived by since then. I will never allow anybody else to ever decide who I am and what I am. And the same way, that job that let you go, that you walked away from, whatever it is, that's history. That's not who you are. You know who you are. You know what you have to offer, and you want to make sure that that comes through loud and clear in all your marketing materials and all your messaging as you look for a new job. Now, when I look at my J&J career, I look back very fondly on it. I still think very well of J&J. I had a little place in my heart, that guy who told me I wouldn't live up to his expectations and let me go. But mostly I'm very positive for J&J. And the reason for that is because throughout, I built some great relationships. That's what helped me be successful. And I had 7 different roles in the 25 years I was at J&J. And those relationships, when I look back on them, were built on trust. They were built on the fact that people believed in me and I believed in them. I knew they were reliable. I knew who I could count on. And as you go through your job search, this trust is really an area that I believe you could focus on to help you be successful. You need to hope and expect confidently, not cocky-wise, but confidently, that you have what it takes to be successful in that role you're interviewing for. You need to build that belief in the interviewer, that trust in you, that you're reliable, that you have the strength to deliver what they need in that role. And I believe so strongly that trust is the foundation of great relationships, and great relationships are the foundation for success, that I built what David was talking about earlier, a trust success model. And like all great models, it's an acronym. And trust stands for transparency, results, understanding, simplify, and team. And I'm going to go through each of these briefly, and I'll stop after each one to answer any questions or take any comments that you have. But first, let's talk about transparency. So you're out of work. I know many of you have been out for a while, but you may want to consider re-looking at what you're doing and make sure that you're on the track that you want to be. Now, what I did when I was out of work, the first thing I did was I was transparent with myself. I took inventory about all those roles I've had in the past. Which were the ones I liked? Which didn't I like so much? What were the skills I used? Maybe the teams I was on, and or when I was working as an individual contributor, what is it that I loved? What is it that I didn't like? Did I like being a leader, individual contributor? What kind of work environment did I want? And think about all those things in your past to help you decide what direction you want to go. Now, if you want to go back into the role that you had before, there's certainly nothing wrong with it, and that's great, but this will allow you to confirm that, or it might find a different direction for yourself, especially when you think about the skills or the competencies that you list that you were good at, that you really enjoyed using. That will help direct you to another job, whether, again, it's in the same career you were in, or if you're looking to switch careers. because those are the skills, those transferable skills are going to be what will help you convince your next hiring manager that you're the person for that role. So one thing, though, I would ask you to consider is, what do you think you want versus what do you really want? And what I mean by that is, I'll give you by way of example. I was a product director for a lead brand in the operating company at J&J I was at, and my boss was the group director. And I had always, throughout my career, focused on doing the best job I can do to position myself for the next job, for the next promotion. And I remember leaving the office about 6 and I pulled into my boss's office. I said, "Jeff, I'm out." And he looked at me and his face was drawn and he looked stressed out and he just didn't look well. And I remember driving home that night thinking, do I want that? Is that the next role that I want? And I realized that I was striving for that role because that's what I'd always done. But in the end, I was fine at the director level. I didn't want to be the vice president or president of the company, whether I could have or not, I don't know. But I decided that I'm not going to strive for that next role. I have enough stress and work at the director level. I don't need to take that next step. So think about what you're looking for now. Is it something that you're doing just because you've always done it? And that may suit you. Or do you want to consider, maybe I do need to make a change. Maybe this is a great opportunity with all those job openings that are out there now for me to take my transferable skills and market myself that way. Some of the things you want to think about additionally is, do you want to be working on your own, being a person who can make your own decisions? Is it balanced life, work-life balance that you're looking for? Do you want to be a leader or an individual contributor? What kind of responsibility or travel do you want? So, think about everything that goes with a job and where do you want to look. All those pieces will go in to help you either confirm or redirect where you're going with your career. For me personally, when I did that, I thought to myself, well, I really like leading people. I love being a sales leader. I love providing value and helping people to improve themselves and their lives. And, when I thought about all these things, I thought about different roles I can be. Maybe I could go back to being a sales manager, or maybe I'd want to be a teacher. I actually always wanted to be a teacher. It didn't have the compensation that I was looking for. Or I could be a coach, and clearly I chose to be a coach. But as you can see, these are just 4 of the values or experiences that I've had that helped me decide what direction I wanted to take my career. And that's what the transparency part of the trust success model will do. And that will also lead you to developing your personal brand. Because obviously the ultimate goal of your job search is to land your next job. But the way you do that is by achieving the goal of separating yourself from the competition. How do you stand out? What do people think about with your name when they hear your name? Now, if you're not sure if personal branding is just one of these things that, it's just a phrase or it's a passing phase or whatever, well, think about if I were to say to you, Breakfast of Champions. And I know many of us of a certain age immediately get a picture of a Wheatie box in front of us, right? Well, that brand was established in the 1930s, 90 years ago. And yet all I have to do is say Breakfast of Champions and a lot of us think of Wheaties. So here's the question you need to ask yourself. What do people think about when they hear your name? What is associated with you and your name, with the people you've worked with and interacted with in the past? And if you're not sure, I suggest you ask people. Call former colleagues, peers, bosses, clients. Ask them, when you think about me in that job, what is it that comes to mind first thing? Is it reliability? Is it problem solver? Is it leadership? Because you need to know what other people are thinking about you. And if that's what you want, great, reinforce it. But if you're not getting the message you want back, then you need to think about, what is my personal brand? How can I re-establish it or adjust it so that people think of me in the way I want to be thought of when they hear my name? So here's some examples of personal brands. For me, I might start, if I were to meet someone and they say, so what do you do? I would say, hey, I help people figure out this crazy job market to find their next opportunity. I'm a career coach and executive coach. I help people at all points of their career, whether it's they're in career transition or they may be in a current role where they feel like they're not realizing their potential or realizing it fast enough. And I help them to achieve more than they ever thought they could achieve. Now, that's kind of a personal brand. You might call that my elevator speech. But I want people that first line to want to know more. And then I hope to be able to clarify that with the next line. I also think your branding statement, your elevator speech, whatever you want to call it, is a great way to answer that dreaded "tell me about yourself" interview question. And I would suggest this to you as well, as a little bit of an aside. There is something called the Primacy Recency effect. And that states that people remember most what you say first and what you say last. So I suggest that as early in that interview as possible or networking conversation, you give your elevator speech. You start off with that. Maybe again, it's the answer to the "tell me about yourself" question. But what I also suggest is at the end of the interview, after you've asked your questions, after you've thanked them and reminded them how much you want this job, I would suggest you leave them with this as well. You might say, listen, if there's one thing you remember from this interview, please let it be that I'm a career coach, an executive coach who helps people at all points of their career reach and exceed their potential. Because that's the last thing they hear, and according to the primacy recency effect, that's the thing they'll remember most. Here's another example of a potential branding statement. I'm a project manager who's known for delivering projects on time and under budget. Well, someone said that to me, I'd say, really, how do you do that? And I would say something like, my colleagues have told me they appreciate that I first look to understand what the desired outcome is, and then I'm totally focused and relentless in focusing on that in everything we do. My approach is disciplined, but it's also flexible, and the results typically meet or exceed expectations. Again, very short and sweet, giving a good selling point to why I might be the project manager you're looking for. And one final example, if you've been out of work for a while, you might say, I'm a master planner and organizer who successfully run a household of 3 children and a spouse. And my fellow stay-at-home parents have told me they admire how I'm able to get things done while engaging everybody and making it challenging and fun. And these are a lot of the same skills I used when I was a sales leader, project manager, etc. So that's how you can tie what you do outside of work into your personal brand. When you do all these things, you'll identify the industries you want. You start targeting companies. You might even talk to recruiters. That will help you focus your search. Now, in terms of all that, I'm sure many of you have heard these numbers. The reality is that 75% of all jobs or more are landed through someone you know, through networking, basically. 10 to 15% would be through a recruiter, and 5% just by randomly posting online. So as you're spending your time in your job search, you should keep those in mind and try to match those percentages as best as you can. So before I go on to the results part of the trust success model, I'll take a quick break. And David, are there any questions or comments, or does anybody want to speak up?
Yeah, Ken. So there are a couple that are in chat now. So the first one, I'm sorry, don't know your first name, C. Hicks. Before getting an interview, you have to get your resume read past the ATS system. Do you have resume tips for older job seekers?
Yes, I do. And actually, the results part of the trust model is going to focus on resumes, really. So I will get to that. And CX, I think you said it was, David. If I don't, when I'm done with that section, ask me again, and I'll make sure that I did.
Very good. So that was one. John has a question. For all this quote unquote self-inspection, isn't it better to get an outside opinion on the subject? How well can I really evaluate myself? What do you think about a personal coach for this campaign of getting a job?
Okay, that's a loaded question. Now, the rest of you may think I paid, who was that, David?
John Sampson.
John, I paid John to say, should I get a coach or not? Well, as a coach, I think you know the answer to that, John. But in all seriousness, I do think it takes both. I think, first of all, you can't let other people define you. As I mentioned earlier, you need to know who you are and what you have to offer so you can lead with your strengths. But at the same time, I do think it's important to have an outside observer, an objective person who's going to be on your side and help you get to where you want to get to, but is also able to tell maybe your shortcomings are in terms of your writing materials, or how you might want to reword things, whether it's on your resume or your LinkedIn profile or in interviews. So I think it's a combination of things. You do need to know yourself. And I'm sure, John, you could describe yourself to some degree, and it would be very accurate from what other people see of you. But as I mentioned with personal branding, it also is good to get an outside view, whether it's from past coworkers or from a coach, on how do you see me? What are my strengths as far as you go? How would you lead if you were me? What would you lead with? So, John, I think it's a very good question, and I think there's a combination of inputs that you can get to get you where you want to get to.
Great, thank you. So that's all the questions we have for right now. We'll move along, and remember, you can type your question in chat or just type the word question and we'll call on you. Great, thanks everyone.
Okay, great, thank you, David. So let's talk about results. As I mentioned, I'm going to focus a lot on the resume with the results part, but results come through and come out in interviews as well, and I'll talk to that a little bit later. But many of you have probably heard that you have 5 to 7 seconds to capture a recruiter's attention. Now, think about what that means in reality. You might think, oh, they're going to read all the way through. After 5 seconds, maybe 3 seconds, done, and get rid of it. The way a recruiter looks at a resume is they really are scanning it. They're skimming it to see what's to get a picture before they begin to look more, or before they decide that they're looking for a phone screen or an interview. So what I do with my clients is I look at their resume in a little bit of different way, and I'm going to show you how I do that. But I consider what you would call the full list. If you were to take your resume right now, first page, and by the way, any of you who think I have to have a 1-page resume, I would dispel that right now. If you've been working for 15, 20, 30 years, it's kind of hard to distill that all down to 1 page. 2 pages is certainly acceptable. 3 pages is debatable. It would have to be really good to have 3 pages, but I would say 2 pages is fine. But the full test would be take the first page of your resume, fold it in half. Does that tell a good enough story that the person reading it would either say, I want to read more, or I want to talk to this person? You should be able to communicate your past experience and successes, what you have to bring to that company, and you should be able to write a compelling resume that first half that the recruiter will skim will cause them to keep reading or to call you in. 3/4 of resumes are discarded because of an unprofessional email. Right now, I would say you have an AOL address, and pardon this joke, that I would suggest you would change it to old.com instead of AOL. Because people who have AOL, when you see that, you think, boy, they're stuck back in the 80s, 90s, or whenever AOL was around. Do they not know how to change it? Are they just, is that who they are? And also, if your email is not professional, I joke that it was a sad day when I had to get rid of the kenstud@aol.com email address, but that's not going to get me a job. It needs to be professional. Gmail is probably your best bet, for having a professional email address. There certainly are others, but anything but AOL you should have. And as I mentioned earlier, LinkedIn, make sure your LinkedIn address doesn't have those letters and numbers at the end, because that's sending a bad message too. You don't want to have a photo on your resume. I started to see more and more photos lately on people's resumes. It makes HR people nervous. I think that once there's a photo, if they reject you, you could be up for age discrimination, racial discrimination, whatever it might be. So they'll see a picture on LinkedIn. You don't need it on your resume. And then, as was mentioned earlier, the ATS, the applicant tracking system, is going to eliminate a lot of resumes as well. There are different styles of resumes you can have. Chronological is just where you have your most recent job, go back throughout your career. A functional resume is used where you just want to highlight different experiences, outcomes, or roles that you've had, but it's not done in that traditional chronological way. Often people will use that if they're trying to switch careers so they can highlight their transferable skills. Oftentimes older candidates will do it so they don't want to give away their age. But the reality is functional resumes oftentimes come across like you're trying to hide something. Functional resumes also are not read as well by the ATS system. The combination resume is a combination of the above two. So here's how I write my resumes in order to make sure that my clients pass that 5 to 7 second skim that a recruiter would do. I start with a summary. Now, here's another difference, summary versus objective. Objectives, we used to write those on resumes. My goal is to land with a company where I could develop my career and grow, blah, blah, blah. A summary, though, is not so much about you as it is about the company you're interviewing for or you're applying to. So you want to have a personal summary at the top of your resume, which also is kind of like a thesis statement. It looks back a little bit about what you've done, but it's also forward-looking about what you will bring to your next hiring manager. I will typically follow that summary. And by the way, I say typically because every person is different. So I do personalize how I coach people. I don't think there's one size fits all, as I know most coaches feel the same way. You've got to work with the person in front of you. But after that summary, I like to put in 2 or 3 bullet point accomplishments, best accomplishments possible, that will prove that summary, prove that thesis statement that you started with. So you have your summary telling who you are and what you can bring to the role. Then here's some examples of how I've done that in the past. And then I might go with some skills or competencies that address the job at hand. That's how you can personalize your resume for each job as well. So that's the top half of the resume. You fold that in half. I see what you've done, what you can do for me. I see examples of how you've done it in the past, and I see the skills that you've used and you have to bring to this next role. That's what I believe will help you get to that next step of the interview process. On your resume, this is the biggest thing, and I know my good friend and excellent coach, Alex Freund, is on this call as well. I'm sure he sees this as well. Most resumes I get are loaded with responsibility statements. They tell us what you were supposed to do on the job. You were responsible for leading a team of 10 people in a sales territory in Northeast Maine, or manage the budget for the consumer division of Johnson & Johnson. Well, those are great responsibilities, but they don't tell me how well you did your job. In fact, they don't even tell me whether you did that or not. It tells me what you were supposed to do, but I don't know whether you did it or not. And that's why you need to have a responsibility statement that describes your role, but then the bullet points that follow need to be accomplishments. They need to tell what was the impact you had on that role. What were the outcomes, the results that you delivered in that role? Because if you just give me responsibility statements, and I've said this to many of my clients, I could take my name and put it on top of that resume if all you have are responsibility statements. But what separates you from everybody else is the outcomes that you delivered, the results that you brought to that former role and that you will bring to this current role. Your bullet point accomplishment statements should have words in it like resulting in, leading to, with the outcome of. That's how you know they're accomplishment statements. That's how you will tell that hiring manager or recruiter how well you did your job, what the impact was that you had on that role. So make sure you have those two differences there. Now, I did not get to that question of keywords and phrases, so I'm not sure if I get to it in understanding. I apologize for that. So let me answer that question now. There's a site online called wordart.com. That's wordart.com. And what you could do there, and there are other sites out there. In fact, JobScan is another one I'll talk to in a minute. But what I would suggest you do is you look at, find 3 or so different job descriptions or job postings for the jobs you're interested in. Copy that down, go to wordart.com, and there's an import button. Well, first it says create. You create, then there's an import button. You paste in the job description one at a time, and then there's a visualize button. And when you hit visualize, it will create a word cloud that the bigger words are words that appear most often in that job description or job posting. If you do 3 separate word clouds, you probably will get a pretty good pattern of what the keywords are for that role. Certainly, you also want to look at the job description, look at the skills and competencies that go with it as well. Then take your resume and do the same thing. Copy and paste it into WordArt, and it will create a word cloud. And are those bigger words, those words that appear most often in your resume, the same words that appear in those job descriptions? Because if they do, then you're most likely on track to have the right keywords there. If not, you probably want to adjust your resume to help you get through that applicant tracking system. JobScan, as I mentioned, is a really good site. It allows you actually to put your resume in one column and the job posting in another, and it will tell you how you match and suggest how you might revise your resume to match it more. And you get a couple of free scans per month, but then you do have to pay for it. But either way, I think it's worth your time to figure out what are the keywords that I need to have throughout my resume and throughout my LinkedIn profile in order to be found by recruiters. I hope that answered that question from earlier. And David, are there any other questions regarding what I've spoken to so far?
There are no questions, but Sam had a comment. He said, "Ken, I am a recruiter, avoid functional resumes."
All right, thank you, Sam. I appreciate the support on that one. Okay, so the understanding part of the trust success model, there really are a few things that we need to understand when we're looking for a job. One is that you really need to be comfortable with social media, and really in particular LinkedIn. LinkedIn is not a spectator sport. You need to be engaged in LinkedIn. First of all, you need to make your profile attractive using those keywords I talked about, sending the message that you want to send that will attract recruiters to your profile using those words. You need to build your network. As I mentioned, 3/4 of jobs at least are landed through someone you know. And you also can use LinkedIn to find a lot of job opportunities out there. Now, LinkedIn works in a very similar way to Google. Think about how you use Google. You're looking for something, you put a keyword into that search bar, and you get 12 pages of links that you could go to. But your goal is obviously to get to that first page of LinkedIn. Now, it's kind of hard to test yourself to see how you're doing right now, but I will tell you that I did it, and I have to admit I don't do it often enough, where I found myself on the 12th page, and I was able to adjust my profile to get to number 3 on the first page. Never 1, but number 3. I felt good about that. But here's how you might test it. It's a little complicated, but it's worth it. Find a good friend that you're connected to on LinkedIn, and then what I would do is both disconnect from each other, because it's hard for you to search. When you search, because that person's in your network, it's gonna be hard to find them, or it will distort where they come up in the search. So you disconnect, and then you do a search for project manager, people, see where that person would come up, or whatever your role is. And then, depending on what page you come on, you would want to adjust, then do it again, search again. Did you move yourself up in that search? And it takes some time, and you'll go back and forth doing it for each other. And then once you get your profile and have the words in there that you want, then make sure you reconnect, because clearly that person is a strong connection that you want to have. But knowing where you turn up in your search is important to help you to revise or update your profile to make sure that you turn up higher in that search than you did the first time you tried. Here's that word cloud I mentioned before. no need to go through it. I went through it already, but this is what you would see. In this case, communicator was a word that was used most often in this person's resume or wherever this document came from. So if that's what you want, great, then this person was on track. When you think about LinkedIn too, everything counts, starting with your picture. The picture is the first impression that a lot of people are going to have of you. You want to make sure that it's professional. You don't want to have one where you've cut other people out of the picture at a wedding you went to, or you don't want to have something that just isn't clear or doesn't come across in a professional way. You need to have a picture of you from the chest up, a professional headshot if possible, smiling, looking at the camera, no mugshots. Mugshots are not good for LinkedIn. I had a client who, she was a medical technologist. Her picture initially was of her with her 2 kids at the zoo, holding an 8-foot-long albino snake. Not a good professional picture. You want to make sure, now if you can't hire a professional, if you're in Philadelphia, by the way, the library on Vine Street, they do once a month, I believe they give free professional headshots, but you can do it with a good smartphone today. You know, as long as you take the time to make it professional looking, that could be good enough for you. You don't need to spend money, but you do need to put the attention to your picture. It may be more important than you think it is. The headline goes right below your picture. As I mentioned, that's where those key words and phrases that we talked about, you want to make sure that they're there. And one of those phrases should be the role you're looking for. You know, remember, it's just like Google. If I'm a recruiter looking for a product director, I'm going to put product director in that search bar. So you want to have that in your headline and throughout your profile. The summary or about section, that is also crucial. You should be writing that in the first person, and that's a big differentiator between your resume and your LinkedIn profile. But by writing it in the first person, you're trying to connect with the reader a little more. The other thing that's really important to think about, if you look at different people's about sections on their profile, what you'll notice is that initially you only see the first 3 lines, and you have to hit a see more button in order to see the rest of that about section. So those first 3 lines need to be incredibly compelling. They need to be an attention grabber, something that almost forces the reader to hit that see more button. I've got to read more about this person. I've got to learn more about them. So those first 3 lines, you don't want to waste it with I'm a project manager with 10 years of experience looking for a new role in blah, blah, blah. That's not going to do it. But if you say something like, I'm a project manager who is known for bringing projects in on time and under budget, and I've done this in every role that I have had. I'm going to say, yeah, how have you done that? And then I'm going to want to see what else you have to say after that. And then I would suggest you might have an example or 2, or you might just explain some of the successes you've had in the past. LinkedIn is where you're going to build a productive network. And I say dig and dig deeper because you're going to find people, but also look, who are they connected to? What companies have they worked for? How else can you grow your network with people that are going to help you get to where you want to get to? It's kind of a Sherlock Holmes adventure. Get in there and see how you can find more and more connections that will help you. And don't give up. You need to stay engaged on LinkedIn. I would suggest to you that you put on your schedule that you're going to go into LinkedIn. If you're in job search mode, I would suggest you certainly need to be there every day, but at least make a goal for yourself that 2 or 3 times a week, you're going to make yourself visible. You're going to post something that you wrote. You're going to repost something that you think is of value, and you're going to put an intelligent comment with it to show people you know what you're talking about, that you're cutting edge in your field. You could comment on other people's things. You could ask a question. You could set up a poll. But the more you get your name out there, the more likely you are to be called, because people are going to start to wonder, who is this person? Let me check out their profile. And you want to make sure you're active in groups that are specific to the area, the career area that you're interested in, because in those groups are recruiters. And if I'm a recruiter and I keep going into the project manager group or groups, 2 or 3 of them, let's say, and I keep seeing your name, I'm going to start to wonder, wow, this person has a lot to offer. Let me look at their profile. Maybe I'll even give them a call. So stay engaged on LinkedIn, keep your name out there, put out good, intelligent, thoughtful comments or content, and that will help you. That's a good part of your marketing mix as you're looking for your next opportunity. So I'll stop here before I get into Simplify. And David, any questions?
Yeah, so a couple came through. This is from Ingo. On my resume, should I keep only the last 2 jobs, 10 years each for 20 years total? Should I keep only the last 2 jobs of history or show everything going further back? How far is too far? What about on LinkedIn?
Okay, great question. I would say, first of all, from a resume point of view, the rule of thumb is you go back 15 years or 3 jobs, more or less. Now, that is not an absolute, because there are a couple different ways you might go to those jobs further back. You might just list them out without, and you might just have a responsibility statement with one or no. You might not even have a responsibility statement. You might just list out your jobs that happened 20, 25, or 30 years ago, just to have the full scope of your career there. Another reason why you might have jobs beyond 15 years or 3 jobs is, let's say you're in a marketing role right now, but you want to get back into sales, but the last sales role you had was 20 years ago. Well, if that's the case, then I would make sure to bring out some of the accomplishments that you had as a salesperson 20 years ago. So I would say, whether it's your resume or your LinkedIn profile, I would suggest going back 15 years, more or less, 3 jobs, more or less, and depending on your situation, that would determine if and how you might list out any further jobs. If you did not list out jobs beyond, I don't think it would be a huge problem. And I'm sure there are different points of view on this. And also, I think each individual circumstance would dictate what direction to go with that. I hope that answered the question.
Okay, thank you. Eileen has a question. Do you recommend including any personality type testing info in your resume, such as Myers-Briggs, etc.?
I don't know. I've never seen that. My concern with that would be, your resume is not, no one's ever going to look at your resume and say, oh, I'm going to call this person and offer them a job, right? The resume is just to get in the door. I think my concern with having more information than you maybe need would be that it clutters your resume and it takes away from the true focus of your resume, which should be the roles you've had, the accomplishments you've had, and what you will bring to the next role. So like I said, I've never seen it, and I can't imagine right now a situation where I would put that in, unless you have enough insight into that company where you know that that's a big deal to them, then you might want to include it. But haven't seen it, not sure I would, I certainly would not necessarily recommend it, but every situation is different.
Okay, thank you. Mandy has a question. You mentioned the About section in LinkedIn is better to use first person, different from the summary section in a resume, which uses third person often. Can you clarify and explain?
Yeah, I mean, it's, I don't know if it's just the way that it is, but the reason why, in LinkedIn, that's just the way, the rule, so to speak, is you should write in the first person, because it is the About section is really where you get to market and sell yourself. By using the first person also, you're connecting with the reader in a different way. You're talking about yourself, what you have to offer, and it can be written in a, I wouldn't say less formal, but in a more familiar way. And I think that allows you, again, to connect with the reader, and they really allows you to communicate who you are and what you have to offer in a different way than the resume would. I hope that is a good enough answer.
Okay. Sharon has a question. I see some pictures with people showing themselves in business casual attire outside. Does it matter if outside or inside?
Are we talking about for the photo on LinkedIn? Is that?
Sharon, do you want to clarify that? You can unmute and clarify.
Yes, it's for the photo on LinkedIn. I'm asking about that. I think some people take a more, it's not that they have their family or the snake in the picture, it's just they're showing a more casual picture of themselves. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, actually, I think, Sharon, it's a very good question, because I think you know, whether this is also could point to the age thing, right? You want to dress appropriately for whatever the culture of that work environment might be. So I don't know. I mean, to be honest with you, I'm not sure. Do bankers still wear suits and ties or suits as a woman? And if they do, and if that's what the culture is, then and that's the job you're going for, then you want to dress the part. I think that most companies now are business casual. And so I think having a more casual picture is important. That doesn't mean that you're sitting on the beach drinking a beer. And I know, Sharon, you're not saying that. But I do think still you want to make sure that people can see your face and that it's clear and that you have that smile and you're looking at the camera. My wife is a photographer and she hates those staid professional shots. So hers are definitely more casual or informal, but they still are professional. So I guess, Sharon, what I'm saying is have a picture that fits the role you're looking for, but still the general guidelines of letting them see your face, smiling, looking at the camera hold true.
Okay, thank you.
Jean has a question. Is the skill competencies section of the resume made up of keywords from the word cloud?
I think it should, a lot of it should be, yes. I would say that, and it's not, there's not just one place where you want to put those words. You want to have them peppered throughout your resume, throughout your LinkedIn profile. You know, you don't want to say, you know, I'm a product director who has always loved product directing, because being a product director is one of the great joys of my life, because I could direct product. You know, you don't want to force it, but you do want to have those keywords throughout your resume. And yes, they should be included in your skills and competencies section.
Great, thank you. And that's called word stuffing, where you just keep putting the same word over and over again. But yeah, let's move on. Thank you.
Okay, and just another thing, word stuffing, David, made me think of it. I've heard some people who will type in keywords in white so that they're not seen by the human eye, but the applicant tracking system will see them. Don't do that for a couple of reasons. One, they do show up when the recruiter might print the resume, they will be seen there. Two is, I really have a problem with starting a relationship, any relationship, personal or professional, with deception. And if that's what you're doing, it's just not, it's bad karma, let alone the fact that if it's found out, then where's the trust, right? I don't trust you because you started out our relationship with trying to deceive me. So don't do that. Don't play games with it. Just be who you are and lead with your strengths. Now, in terms of simplify, when it comes to the trust success model, I really want to focus on interviewing. And when you're interviewing, you really need to prepare yourself. Sun Tzu was a 5th century Chinese military strategist, wrote the book, The Art of War. And it's a book that is perennially a top business book seller. Not because war and business are the same, but the strategies that he used were similar to strategies that we could use today in business to be successful. And if you think about, maybe if you, let's do a sports analogy here, if you pardon me on that. Many of you have seen athletes in the locker room. Maybe they're laying on the floor, headphones on, eyes closed before the game. What they're doing is they're playing the game before they get on the field or the court. They're seeing what's going to happen to them so that when it does happen to them, they're prepared. They're not surprised. They've already done it in their mind, so they'll take care of it in real life as well. And you need to do the same thing. Take the time to prepare. Do your research on the company, the industry, the marketplace, the competitors. If you know the interviewer, look them up on LinkedIn, Google them, get as much information as you can, and then think about how that interview is going to play out. See yourself in that position and see yourself winning that next role. Because as Sun Tzu said, victorious warriors win first, then go to war, while defeated warriors go to war first, and then try to figure out how to win. I mentioned the primacy recency effect. Again, make sure you say first and foremost your strongest, best personal branding, elevator speech message. And when you're done at the end, make sure you reinforce to them, if nothing else, please remember this about me. The 3 P's of interviewing that I work with my clients are prepare, you need to have a process, and I'll talk to that in a moment, and you need to practice. You don't want the first time the words come out of your mouth to be when you're in that interview, because oftentimes that great answer you have in your head and you think is perfect is not the one that comes out of your mouth the first time you try to say it. So practice. Practice in front of a mirror. Use a videotape yourself, since videotape, there's a sign of age, right? Video yourself so that you could review it and critique yourself. Get yourself a coach or a mentor or someone you trust to give you good objective feedback on your interview answers. The process, I say, many of you are probably familiar with STAR. I don't care if it's STAR or CAR or anything you use. The reason why a process is important is because it's a repeatable way for you to answer a question effectively. It also allows you to tell a story. Stories are very compelling. Stories are very memorable. By having a process, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end, which also prevents you from rambling on. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes when I get stressed out, I have a tendency of going on and on and on. I can remember an interview I had in particular where I started answering the question and I digressed a little more and a little more. And all of a sudden there was a voice in my head saying, get back to the interview question. You're too far gone. And I didn't know where to go with it. And I actually had to ask on the interview, I'm sorry, could you please repeat that question? That is not where you want to be in an interview. So make sure you have your answers ready to go, and a process will help you do stuff called the STARS answer. So STARS, again, allows you to tell a story, and it's contained, beginning, middle, and end. The situation, here's what I was presented with. The task, here's what I needed to do. Here are the action steps that I took. And once again, it comes back to results. What was the outcome of those actions? Good or bad, you need to tell them. If they were bad, that's not necessarily off limits in an interview, as long as you could say, here's what I learned from it and what I did differently the next time. But here's the key. Regardless of what process you use, you want to have this last S, so what? So why am I telling you this? Because you want to make sure that you connect your response to the job that you're interviewing for. You want to paint the picture of you in that role for that hiring manager so that they can see you in that role delivering results similar to what you're telling them about right now. And you also want to make sure that their takeaway from your interview answer is the takeaway you want them to have. You know, oftentimes people might say, well, obviously that's the reason why I told them that story. But I don't know, what's obvious to you may not be obvious to me. And in fact, all you have to do is look at our political landscape today. What's obvious to a Democrat is certainly not obvious to a Republican. So I think it's really important that you end your interview answers by saying, the reason why I told you that, I'm giving you that example, is because I know in this role, you need somebody who's going to be able to make the hard decisions and to lead a team to change to be successful. Tell them why you're answering. Don't leave it to chance that they're going to interpret that answer in the way you want them to interpret it. You're never going to be able to prepare for every interview question you're going to get. Sure, you'll probably be asked, tell me about yourself. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? But beyond that, it's hard to tell. So my suggestion to you would be this. Take your, write down your STARS examples. Literally write them down, type them into your computer so that you have them there almost as a script. And you're going to want to practice those to the point where they become conversational. then take each of those stars and put them under one of the key competencies or skills for that job. You might have 1 or 2 under decision making. You might have 1 or 2 under leadership or analytical skills. And some of them may be similar. You probably want to have at least 5 to 7 that cover all the competencies that you need to cover for that job. Some of them may be the same competency. I mean, decision making and leadership could have the same stars answer, but what you want to do if you have that is then when you're in the interview, you're thinking, okay, what are they asking me? They're asking me a leadership question here. I got a stars for it. And you just have to adjust your introduction into it, the situation maybe, or however you introduce that story. So then it really helps simplify things. You have your stars answers, you know what competency or skill you want to use them under, you've practiced them a lot so that you're very conversational. So you could walk into that interview confident that you're going to answer any interview question that they have. And that confidence will come across in your answers. And that will allow you to be more conversational in your interview as opposed to being, just some job seeker looking up to that, strong, almighty hiring manager. You want to go in there, be conversational, and deliver the information you need to deliver to win that job. I'm going to go through team very quickly because it's a short section. And David, I'll take some final questions before I have a slide or 2 to wrap things up. But your team is about really 2 teams. The first one is the ones that will help you when you're asking yourself, how did I get here? What happened? I can't believe I'm out of work. That's your family, your friends, your supporters who will pick you up when you're feeling down. Your people who will help you motivate yourself, that will encourage you, that will celebrate with you your successes and your wins, and when you finally land that next job. You need to have that personal team for you. But you also need to have a professional team. And regardless of which team you look to, you need to be out there. Being on this call, believe it or not, just being out on this call is big because isolation is the enemy of the unemployed. When you're alone, even if you feel like you're working all day, you're putting in a full-time job to find your next job, you're still alone. And in your head, a lot of us have that negative voice that grows louder and louder. And the more you're alone, it feeds on itself to the point where it becomes almost overwhelming. But by getting out in situations like this, by having one-on-one networking conversations, going to networking meetings, whether it's virtually or in person, helping other people, that will keep you positive, keep you focused, and it's also good karma that will bring things to you. So I know it's hard for introverts, but push yourself to get engaged with other people in a way that's comfortable for you. Because being on your own and not having other people supporting you or helping you is really a tough way to go, and it will feed on the negativism that often is associated with a job search. And then you want to make sure that you're out because you're meeting people, even if they're unemployed also. They still know people. They have neighbors, they have friends, they have former coworkers that are in places that they may be able to help you get in. And again, you can help them. So networking, whether you like it or not, is a big part of how you're going to land your next job. And there are ways for introverts to be very successful with networking. In fact, introverts, because they don't like to talk about themselves or talk too much, often are the best networkers, because networking is not about asking for a job. And really, it's not even about you. Networking is about learning about that other person. How did they get into the role they're in? What do they like about it? Certainly, you'll tell them about your situation and ask them for advice or guidance or introductions they'd be able to make for you. It's also, networking is also about helping other people and asking, how can I help you? What can I give back to you? And oftentimes unemployed people feel like, I don't have anything to give, I'm unemployed. That's not true. You have a lot to give. You have experience, you have connections, you have just your personality that can help other people. So get out there, make sure you're talking to people, set goals for yourself that are realistic for you with networking and having networking conversations. So to wrap it up, before I finalize, ask for more questions and then put the final wrap on it, looking for a job can be frustrating. It can be discouraging. There are certainly a lot more no's than there are yeses, but the beauty of the job search is you only need one yes. And when you get that yes, you forget about all the negatives, all the no's, all the challenges that you had while you were looking for your job. And the fact of the matter is, you don't know when that yes is coming. It could be that next call. You might have made 99 calls and not gotten through. It could be that 100th call. So don't stop. Keep moving forward, keep being positive, believe in yourself, and you will land your next great opportunity. So before I put the final wrap on, David, are there any other questions or comments?
There's one from Craig. It's about HireVue. On the HireVue recording interviews where they allow re-recording, does the company have access to the ones not submitted?
I don't know. I would think that they probably only look at the one. I believe that they may be deleted as you record over it. If somebody else knows better, I know there was an HR person on, they may know better than me, but I don't think they look at the other ones. They want to look at the one that you submit.
So I have to admit, I thought that may be a tough question for you when I was Googling it when I saw it. And so I did find on the application Zendesk, which is kind of a help desk application, about HireVue. What they say is some companies give you the option to re-record an answer. However, it's important to note that on HireVue, the app will not save the first video for you to then choose later if you opt to re-record. The first video is erased and replaced. So according to the research that Zendesk either investigated or done, they are saying no, it's not accessible.
Yep, that makes sense. So that being the case, again, you can record yourself separate from HireVue on your computer. If you're all on video right now, you can record yourself and practice your answers so you don't take up that one practice question on HireVue. And then you can critique yourself or have someone else critique you. So you definitely want to make sure you practice those situations being on video. And another thing too, and I'm not looking at everybody right now, but when you think about age discrimination, I mentioned technology. I think that's the biggest area where people might look at you and say, this person is too old because they're not comfortable with technology. I said you don't have to be a programmer, and you don't. But being comfortable on video is one way you could demonstrate your comfort level with technology. So if you're on these calls and you're not having your camera on and you're uncomfortable with video, I would suggest you put your camera on and start getting comfortable. Like anything, the more you do it, the more comfortable you'll be. So take advantage of these informal, inconsequential, if you pardon the expression, David, it's not going to affect your career, situations to get comfortable on video. I will tell you, I do some work for a nonprofit called Philadelphia Futures. I love this group. If you guys are interested, I'll talk to you separately about it. It's a mentoring group where you mentor first-generation college students, kids who are going to college for the first time, get hooked up with them when they're in high school and stay with them up through college. So I have 2 kids I'm mentoring now that are in college, but Philadelphia Futures asked me to do a video that they could use to promote being a mentor for other potential mentors. So I just did a quick 3-minute video, sent it over to them. And their response was, thank you for sharing your knowledge and your technological expertise with us by sending us this video. Now, my kids thought that was the funniest thing they've ever heard because technology is not me. I'm just not comfortable with it. But just by doing that, I showed them that I was comfortable with technology. So as I mentioned earlier, it's not that I'm 61 years old why I wouldn't get a job. It would be because I couldn't handle technology. Technology, email address, your use of social media and LinkedIn, those are things that could prevent the technology question from even coming up if you demonstrate a comfort level in those areas.
Okay, thank you, of course. And kind of a related question from E, that's the only name that I see there. And it's kind of a statement. Examples of best answers when someone says you may be too old. So I guess it's, can you provide an example of answer when someone says you're too old?
I am so glad you brought that question up because I wanted to bring it up as well. The way that comes out often, E, I'm sure you'd agree, is, aren't you overqualified for this role? Which could be a certain description. It certainly could be interpreted as, aren't you too old for this job? And I would caution everybody about how they answer that. In fact, I would say to you, I would not answer it immediately. I would ask a clarifying question. Because when I ask you, if I were to ask you, aren't you overqualified for this role? Some of you may think that they really do think I'm overqualified. I did this role 20 years ago. Why would I want to do it now? Some of you may think, oh, they think I'm getting paid too much. They don't want to pay me. Some of you may think, oh, they're just thinking I'm going to take this job until I find something better, or I'm going to be bored in this role. I mean, those are 4 answers off the top of my head about what aren't you overqualified could mean. So the first thing I would ask would be, I'm sorry, I'm not really sure what you're asking me. Can you please give me more information about that? Oops, sorry about that. And then they might say, well, yeah, I'm just concerned that really this role doesn't pay that much, and you probably making so much more than that. Then you can answer that question. Because if I were to answer the question, aren't you overqualified, and say, well, no, yeah, I did do this role a while ago, but really it was my favorite role. I loved doing it. I think I was good at it, and I still could do more and grow in that role. And I know I could contribute a lot to the company because of my experience. Maybe that's not a bad answer, except as an interviewer, I'm thinking, you're not going to be happy with the salary. So you didn't actually answer the question. So whether it's, aren't you overqualified, or any other question you're not sure about, clarify it. Ask, can you ask me that again, or could you tell me more what you're looking for? I want to make sure I answer that question. That will demonstrate confidence. That will demonstrate that you're on the same level as this person. You're not just some peon coming in trying to get a job. And it will make sure that you answer the question correctly. So I hope that was helpful.
Okay, and that seems to be all the questions that, excuse me, that we have right now, Ken. So thank you very much. I think you had, you said a wrap-up slide or two?
Yes, so just to remind everybody, I do believe that the trust success model can help you organize your search, find your opportunities, and land your next job. If you follow these steps, I believe you will get to where you want to get to. I am very happy to help anyone or talk to anybody about their particular situation. I sent these slides to David just before I started. And these are active links. If you want to have a 30-minute conversation about your situation, I'd be happy to help you in any way that I can. I promise you it won't turn into a sales call. The way I do it is I would coach you for 30 minutes. I'm sure I can help you improve whatever it is you want to work on. And then at the end, if you want to talk about working together, we will. And if not, well, then we've made a great connection, and who knows how we can help each other in the future. I also do have an offer that you might want to sign up for. And if you go to my website at shercoaching.com, there are a couple other free offers for guides and things like that. So these are active links. Please feel free to use them. I hope to talk to you all, and I really do want to thank you for your time, attention, and great questions. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Ken. And before you finished, I did again in chat, I did post your contact information there as well for anyone that just wants to copy and paste it. And I did also put the acronym of TRUST for Transparency, Results, Understanding, Simplify, and Team. So it's there. In addition to the slides, in a little while, I will also be downloading and posting the chat so anybody can go back and look at any of the information and conversations that we were sharing in there as well. But this was a wonderful presentation, and certainly from the perspective of so many of us on these groups are the plus or minus 50 years old, it was just very relevant for us. So thank you so much. Want to let folks know what's coming up. In just a few minutes, of course, we will formally end the meeting. I'll stop the recording, but we'll keep the session open for anyone who wants to kind of hang around the meeting room. So feel free to do so. Ken is welcome to as well. So according to your time availability, so probably half hour or so, we'll keep the meeting room open. We'll be right back here though, again, next week. Next week is August 13th. And career coach Gary Landy will be with us, and he will be talking about cover letters and thank you letters. Those are the unutilized job search tools. There are some people that don't believe in them. There's some people that don't know how to use them effectively, and Gary will explain how they can be a powerful tool for you, the letters. So that's next week. The following week, August 20th, Mark Miller will be here, and he will be talking about career and industry disruption. And I think we are all feeling some form of disruption, certainly as we're facing job search. So Mark will be talking about that. Other groups in the area that are still actively meeting or ongoing virtually. Next Saturday, August 14th, the Breakfast Club of New Jersey will be meeting, and you can get the information on their website, thebreakfastclubnj.com. Saturday the 14th, 8 o'clock in the morning, Ed Hahn. He is a LinkedIn guru, and he will be talking about LinkedIn, how recruiters use it. So if you want to know how to make your LinkedIn profile competitive and found more easily for recruiters, you'll want to know how recruiters use LinkedIn. So that's next Saturday, the 14th of August at 8 a.m. Also, New Jersey Job Seekers meets every evening at 7:30 in the evening. I'm sorry, every Tuesday evening, 7:30 evening. And so you can find the Zoom meeting link, the connection link, in our PSG of Mercer County LinkedIn group. And our cousin organizations, PSG of Central New Jersey meets Mondays at 10:30 in the morning, psgcnj.biz. And PSG of Morris County meets Wednesday mornings at 9:30, psgmc.org. So that is what we have going up. And so once again, thank you to Ken. We certainly appreciate your continued support and help of job seekers. And we're very appreciative of your involvement with our group. And for everyone, remember, next week we will be right back here. It's August 13th. Gary Landy will talk about cover letters and thank you letters, the underutilized job search tools. So until we get to see you again, either in person or virtually, we will simply say, bye, everyone.